Greetings, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Topic UFO. I am your host, Rick Schooler. Today, we're going to be speaking about a very controversial case, and that is the Billy Meier UFO case. Our guest will be Mr. Michael Horn, who has a new film out on DVD. It's entitled, And Did They Listen? And he'll be here to discuss with us this new film of his, as well as many other areas of the case. Like I said, this is a controversial case. From what I've gathered, from what I've seen, there are people out there that swear by this case being 100% accurate and true. And then there are those that say it's 100% a hoax. So we're going to visit with Mr. Horn, and he can share with us his knowledge and information and background, and then you can make up your own mind. Before we bring Michael on, I would just like to say hello to one of our newest viewers. Her name is Alicia, and I believe she is down in Florida, watches us on Roku. And she sent a very, very nice note to our Topic UFO TV page on Facebook. And I just wanted to say thank you, Alicia. I really appreciated that post, that message. Very, very nice. You know, you can always contact us here via the Topic UFO TV Facebook page or my personal Facebook page at rick.schooler. Always love to hear from the viewers out there. If you have ideas for a show, if you want to say hi, if you hate the show, whatever. Stop by and let me know what you think. All right, well, listen, we'll be back in just 1 minute with Mr. Michael Horn talking about his new film, And Did They Listen? Don't go away. We'll be right back.
And the word tonight is UNIVAC, the giant brain made only by Remington Rand. It's the first electronic computing system to be proven by widespread use. Because of its exclusive self-checking features, UNIVAC cannot make a mistake. That's why the United States government, General Electric, U.S. Steel, Metropolitan Life, and DuPont have selected UNIVAC, the world's first electronic computer practical for commercial use. A product of Remington Rand, famous, too, for the Remington, the world's #1 electric shaver.
Welcome back, everyone. As I said, tonight we're going to be speaking to Mr. Michael Horn. He's got a new film out on DVD entitled, And Did They Listen? It's about the Billy Meier UFO case. And I am so glad that he was nice enough to come on the show. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Michael Horn. Michael, are you there, sir?
Hi, Rick. I am here. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, I tell you, Michael, after I watched your film, thank you so much for sending me a copy. It really piqued my curiosity, and I went out and started doing some searches on both you and Billy Meier case. And one thing that I found out right off the bat is you have been attached to this case for several years.
I've been researching it for 35 years.
35 years. I had no idea it was that long. I saw a video of you at some type of UFO Congress or something back in 2006. 35 years. So Michael, of course, we're going to talk about your new film, but let me just ask you, after 35 years of looking into this case, investigating this case, what are your thoughts? I mean, what have you come away with regarding this case?
That's a great question, and the answer is bound to upset some people. But since you asked it, I have concluded through my own research and perhaps along with the other people who've researched this and who did it before me and whose work I've also looked into extensively, I concluded the following. The Billy Meier UFO contacts are the only scientifically proven, still ongoing contacts between extraterrestrial human beings and one Earthman, Mr. Billy Meier in Switzerland. And this constitutes, in my opinion, the single most important true story in all of science and human history.
And if you had to pick, a couple of points out of this case that you feel really prove the validity of the story, are there any things that just really shout out that people should look at when they're looking to confirm this case?
Yes, there is an abundance of physical evidence, meaning UFO photos, films, video, sound recordings, metal samples, all that type of stuff. Sampling from each of those categories has been done, meaning experts in all fields have, as long ago as over 30 years ago, analyzed specific samples from those categories of physical evidence, and they've concluded that the material was authentic, there was no hoaxing, there was no manipulation or special effects models used, there were metals that were not reproducible with any technology available to an IBM scientist at the time. Stellar scientists such as Michael Malin from the Mars mission, NASA's Mars mission, authenticated the photographs. Most people don't know this. Sound recordings were authenticated in several different sound labs, including our U.S. Navy labs, Naval Undersea Lab in Connecticut. And even more recently, Meier's most controversial UFO photos, 63 in fact, of the wedding cake UFO and a 5-minute video, that was authenticated, as was his earliest film from 1975, known as the Pendulum UFO. Now, while all of that happens to be true, verifiable, and one can search, and even with the presentation of the latest photo analysis, the tools, the mechanisms by which these photos were authenticated, those tools are provided online by the professor who did all the analysis. Anybody can duplicate these results. Now, having said that, in specific response to your question, the most compelling evidence that proves the case and can prove it in as little as 5 minutes, if anybody wants to do it, is the verifiably, prophetically accurate scientific information, a significant amount of which we know to be ironclad because of copyrights, which establishes its prior publication prior to what we call official discovery. I'll just take one more second on that. Copyrights don't in and of themselves authenticate the content. What they do is establish the date of publication of content. In the Meier case, when you go to any number of these specific examples of copyrighted dated information and you compare it to the so-called new discovery, you find out that Meier actually specifically foretold these things long, often decades before they occurred or were discovered. That makes this case ironclad, and there is nothing else in all of ufology that comes within, if you'll pardon the pun, light years.
Well, I think one of the most surprising things about this case for me, as a UFO newbie, I always thought that the Billy Meier case was simply about some UFO photos, some 8 millimeter films, etc., etc. But this case goes far beyond that into these, what you just mentioned, these prophecies. Uh, do you think a lot of people don't know about the prophecy part of this, or is that a well known?
A lot of people don't know because almost as soon as the Meyer material started to become published in Europe, right around 1975, concerted efforts were made through UFO organizations as well as through the intelligence community to discredit Meyer, to call him a faker and a hoaxer, in addition to the 22 documented assassination attempts on Mr. Meyer, his life. These unrelenting disinformation campaigns and character assassination attempts have been, up to this very day, promulgated and promoted in order to keep people away from this information. And I will add at this point, rivaling the work of the intelligence agencies, CIA, others from other countries, the largest opponents, the most intense and virulent suppressors of the truth of this case are the luminaries in the UFO industry, the UFO community, what we call ufology. Those are the biggest enemies of revealing the presence even of the Meyer material, these specific prophecies, as well as his authenticated physical evidence.
So, when it comes to these prophecies, can you mention one or two?
Well, yes, and let me draw a distinction here just to be, perfectly clear. There are some prophecies, including letters or bodies of prophecies themselves, for which the original no longer exists. And I will also explain how people can know that these are original from the dates connected to them. There are other specific ones where you can go online and we show you the copyright pages, and with a little due diligence, people can find tons of the ones that we can verify that way. We put out a film called As the Time Fulfills before this current film. We have 55 specific ones in there, a lot of them with the ironclad copyright date information. So Meyer was the first person that I know of, as far back as 1951 and 58, to specifically warn of man-made climate change, of global warming, the man-made contributions to it, and the accompanying phenomena that we would be faced with, such as the increased frequency and intensity of all forms of storms, hurricanes, blizzards, snowstorms, droughts, fires, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tornadoes, hurricanes, typhoons, landslides. All of this started to be published by Meyer in 51. At the same time, at these early dates, he was foretelling that each home would eventually have a television and a computer, 1951 and 58. In 58, he said that these would be interconnected electronically around the world. We know it as the internet today.
Right.
In 58, Meyer specifically foretold AIDS, the 2 U.S. wars with Iraq, plastic credit cards, portable cell phones, the coming EU dictatorship, the European Union, which didn't exist yet, that it would be a dictatorship, which is beginning to start to show itself to be, and dozens more things, including biometric chipping that would be initiated by the US and the EU to control every human being on the face of the earth. He also wrote in number 127 in the 1958 letter that people would so lose their sense of reality, they would be dazzled by imagery and phantasmagoria, such as we have through digital, online, virtual, endless electronic and manipulated media, that they would be incapable of perceiving reality and recognizing the truth, and that this would be the time, starting in the third millennium, when a lot of the really severe environmental destruction came upon us, if we did not heed these warnings and start to make corrections long ago, which we didn't.
So, the obvious next question would be, how did he know this? And from my understanding, from what I have seen, the information, this information was provided to him by his ET contacts, or was the power to foresee it given to him by the ET contacts?
Well, Meier's contacts with the extraterrestrials started when he was 5 years of age. He was tutored, mentored, assisted technologically so that his full capacities could be brought to the fore in this lifetime for him. And these were capacities which previous incarnations of the spirit that was now the personality of Edward Albert Meier, young Edward Albert Meier, these previous incarnations possessed these innate prophetic abilities as well. And in each case, as was also true for the previous prophets before him, in addition to his own abilities being brought to the fore, the technologies of the extraterrestrial tutors were employed so as to provide him with information and even direct experience of events that would only later either occur if we were foolish enough to let them, or that we could, avoid if we took the warnings to heart. Some things were predictions, meaning they differ from prophecies, because prophecies are warnings about things that will occur if we don't change the course we're going. Personally, collectively, things that are very logical. There's nothing really mystical here. This is all based on logic. Predictions are those events which will happen with certainty. They are usually attributed to some form of cosmic event, a meteor or a comet coming through, or even something on the earth that may not be man-made, like a certain kind of a volcanic eruption. But they also refer to prophecies that have gone past the point of no return. Then they become predictions written in stone. Some of those things were actually foretold thousands of years ago by prophets who were previous incarnations of the spirit that is now Billy Edward Albert Meier, and some of that information was directly from the Pleiaren extraterrestrials.
Now, one thing I've heard you say, when you start talking prophecies and these predictions and stuff, some people may start thinking along the lines, well, this is some type of religious or spiritual thing that Michael Horn is trying to push. But I've heard you say very specifically that that's absolutely not what this is, right?
Yes, there's two things you mentioned, religious and spiritual. They're not the same thing, although there can be some spiritual aspects to religions. This is in no way, shape, or form connected to any kind of religion. Religions are belief systems that never prove to be true. There's no offense.
Right.
They are beliefs. They're not science. They're not factual. They are basically formed around mythologies. Some of these mythologies have origins in truth that is very different than what the religions themselves either promote, acknowledge, or know. The gods of our past, according to the information in the Meier case, were extraterrestrial space-traveling humans with very vast technological abilities and in some cases highly advanced spiritually, but they abused their power and they lorded it over primitive Earth humans, representing themselves as the creators of everything, which simply isn't the case. Spiritual teaching is in this case. There's nothing to force on anybody because there are zero beliefs connected with anything in the Meier case.
Gotcha.
It's not a cult. It's not a sect. It's not a religion. It's not a belief system. You're not solicited to join anything. No one knocks on your door. You have free access to all of the important material, as I say, freely, and you can study it because, pardon me, it's really about a teaching, not a belief system. And those are hugely, vastly different things. So if people think I'm pushing anything, I'm terribly sorry. I would say I would be much more guilty of, certainly coming forward and saying there are no other genuine UFO contactees on Earth, and that's irritating enough for people in the UFO community and all of that. As for the rest of it, there's a very deep and profound spiritual teaching and body of information that, should we have the wit and wisdom to even check it out, could help us out, to help ourselves out of this huge hole that we keep on digging and falling deeper into.
That is true. Now, I'm not sure if I understood you correctly just now, but let me ask you, there are thousands of people on this planet who say they have been visited or abducted by some type of extraterrestrial being. Do you generally believe in these people's stories?
Not as they present them, and as many of them may believe them. There are people who believe all sorts of stuff. We have religions for that, and ufology and all of this related material has become a belief system. It's the least scientific of any topic that tries to represent itself as science that I know of. So let me answer specifically to what you were saying. Lots of people believe or think or imagine that they have somehow interacted with, been abducted by extraterrestrials, et cetera, et cetera. It should be stated clearly, even from the material in the Meier case, there are a handful or maybe two handfuls over centuries of people who actually were taken on board an extraterrestrial craft and examined because the people were scientific and interested, and they were not malevolent, and they weren't doing anything terrible, except they were regarding us as a scientific opportunity, and they tried to blank out people's memories. In some cases, they were successful, and some not. This epidemic, this hysteria, is so illogical and nonsensical. I could take as much or as little time as you want breaking it down. And when people start to think it through, if you have advanced, let's say human beings, since most of this nonsense about the grays and all of this is based on high-level disinformation and manipulation based around an actual event or two, like Roswell, or android bodies, androids, not the extraterrestrials, were discovered, some that were still functioning, some that were dead. And out of that, the intelligence services very cleverly created and demonized evil, weird-looking, monstrous extraterrestrials, and people have been bombarded for well over 60 years with every form of demonized alien to keep us afraid of anything outside of us and anything that cannot be constrained or controlled by our military, our governments, our religions, our industry, etc. So people think that advanced space-traveling beings who, by virtue of evolution and technology, would have lifespans of many, many hundreds of years, who would have very interesting intelligence levels and genetics, would want to, for reasons that logic defies, go pick up Aunt Mary or Uncle Joe and float them through walls and mess with their DNA and be so excited about creating these imaginary hybrid babies for which not one has ever popped forward because they don't exist. And I'll go a little farther here because this is a very sore point with me. The people who promote this totally dishonest and disinformation campaign, and that includes people in the exopolitics group, in the disclosure group, in MUFON, and all of these UFO groups, they also happen to know know that the Meier case is authentic, that it is the only authentic contact case, and that it must, at all costs, be kept from their groups, from their membership, because otherwise the room's empty and there's a big hollow sound and the cash registers stop clinking. As I said prior to that little tirade, I can take any of the claims of alien interaction and abuse of the populace and dismantle them. Even the so-called animal mutilations, most of these things where there is any actual physical abduction of a human being, according to the Meier case, which so far is the most impeccably accurate information on the planet about anything, these are secret military operations, again, designed to terrify people, to throw people off balance and chase lights in the sky and think that they are being abducted and all the rest of this. The only danger we face on the planet right now is from ourselves, what we do to each other with our strange, crazy autoimmune disease that I mentioned in the film, of harming ourselves and each other in every conceivable way. We don't need to worry about extraterrestrials. There's good, bad, and the indifferent out there. But if we don't survive ourselves, it will not matter.
That I will agree with you. But let me ask you, if what you're saying is true, and all of this ET activity that's been talked about now for, I don't know, when did it become relevant? Maybe back in the 70s, I guess, is when it really kind of started going. But if all of this stuff is not true, the stuff about the Greys is not true, why the Billy Meier case, Michael? What makes that true? I mean, is there any more evidence for these extraterrestrial visitors than there are with the Greys and anything else?
Sure. Well, let's just start with the, I'll kind of be a little repetitious and state the following.
Okay.
And add to it. Roswell was a real event, and from what the Plejaren have told Meier, there may be at least 8, possibly more of those crash scenarios on different parts of the planet, crash retrievals. I first heard about Roswell when I was in high school through a boy who was the son of an Air Force officer who talked about flying saucer that crashed and it was taken off to an Air Force base in Ohio. That was a real event, and there were other real events. Those kinds of events tended to be from a limited number of extraterrestrial societies that were looking at this world and on little scientific missions and what have you, and for whatever reason, failures, radar interruption, what have you, some craft crashed. These were not in any way, shape, or form attacks. If extraterrestrials exist, including the ones from Roswell and before and after, with the technologies available to them, at any time in our history, they could have annihilated us, taken us over, etc. So logic tells us that all of these, pardon me, loony ideas that people have about I'm being abducted and I'm in contact, I'm so special, I'm in contact with extraterrestrials. Really? When was the last time the president called you? The vice president? How about a Supreme Court justice, a senator, congressman, your governor, your mayor, your dog catcher? But people from outer space you're so important they have to, pluck your genetics or whatever, or talk to you through your head. So until and unless people can put evidence on the table that is even remotely as solid, and here comes the answer about the Meier case, as the evidence in the Meier case that has been scientifically verified by people who are experts in their field, some of whom were skeptical. Michael Malin, David Froning, an astrophysicist. In case you don't know, and in case your audience doesn't know, very recently, a NASA aerospace engineer, Matthew Wiskowitz, who worked on the International Space Shuttle, a space station, the space shuttle, worked for Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Honeywell, you name it. He has come out and endorsed the authenticity, the singular authenticity of the Meier case, and agreed to join me in public presentations. Now, do you think you're going to get another scientist to come forward and say, I know that this particular XYZ case is real. There is no evidence for them. Yes, we have the rubber chicken circuit, and bless Stanton Friedman for making an endless career out of going around and babbling about Roswell. But there's nothing there. There's not one iota of remaining verifiable evidence. There's nothing we can force our government to reveal, because for the most part, our government doesn't know anything. Those elements of government that do can't be forced to reveal anything, and there's very little, nothing tangible to put on the table from those events. Now, the Meier case has 6 categories of still irreproducible physical evidence that encompasses over 1,200 clear, primarily daytime UFO photos, 8 film segments of video, 4 different sound recording events that were done in the presence of up to 15, 20 other people, including an undercover policeman, metal samples analyzed at IBM by Marcel Vogel, 7-fingered handprints that were embedded in the surface of several cars at the center in Switzerland, open to scientific examination. Linda Moulton Howe said she was going to bring scientists to examine it, and she never did. Stuff that was just freely available. Now, where on earth, in addition, then, do you also find 26,000 plus pages of information, a huge volumes of it, that is the prophetically accurate scientific and world event related information completely unique to the Meier case? I have told people, and I am not the most welcome person in ufology. You are wasting your time, people. The more time you spend chasing lights in the sky and listening to tall tales from people who cannot prove their stories, the more time you are dragged away from the most important story in all of human history, freely available. You don't have to join, don't have to buy my film, don't have to do a darn thing except hit your keyboard and start checking it out. That is where I stand on this, and I'm glad to go over any part of it. And I will tell you, in addition, the president of MUFON knows the Meier case is true. He said as much. What he said was, we know it's true, it's just that it's too good. Not too good to be true, too good. Stephen Bassett from Exopolitics, after several hours, over a couple of years of my offering to bring this case to his Exopolitics event and his figuring out ways to turn me down, he then took 2 weeks to find a way to refuse my public offer to him of all the material in the Meier case to spread through Exopolitics. It took him 2 weeks to figure out how to avoid taking this material and just opening it to his community. See, the truth is something that stings when you're a huckster, when you're a charlatan, when you're out there because this is a field of entertainment for you and some bucks, and you can pay Congress people to show up for some charade in Washington where they dare not mention Billy Meier, because if people hit those keyboards and start searching, and when they get through all the skeptical nonsense that is launched out there to try and discredit it, they're going to go, good gosh, why didn't I ever hear about this before? Meier's been taking UFO photos since 1964 in India. And today we've got an industry based around utter nonsense, trivializing this historical event.
Well, Michael, let me ask you a question here, because, obviously you are very passionate about this case. And you mentioned that, what makes these people so special, or make them think they're so special, these alleged abductees. So I'm going to reverse that and ask you, why Billy Meier? What was so special about Billy Meier?
Well, that's an excellent question. I'm going to give it to you within the context of the information in the case. And when I state that here, I should, and maybe I should have said this before, there are things in the case that I consider speculative. That means they pertain to information either from the far distant past or the as yet unarrived future, that I cannot prove. And of course, they haven't been disproved. So according to the information in this case, reincarnation, according, again, to the information in the case, is a fact of life. We have two components in every life, basically. There's more, but there's two basic components. One is called the soul. In our common parlance, it's really the psyche in terms of the Meier case and their terminology. It's a different term in German, but we would say it's the psyche, located primarily, but not exclusively, around the solar plexus. The other part of the human being, the truly immortal part, is the human spirit, which is located deep within the center of the brain. That is the part of us that reincarnates millions and millions of times in this upward spiral of evolution, whereby ultimately the spirits that we essentially are remerge with the creation, this universe. It's a vast cosmology. Now, to come in on your answer for you, Meier's spirit, or spirit form as they sometimes say, is said to be extraordinarily ancient, far, far older than any existing spirit forms. And in the past on our earth, it has incarnated as 6 other specific prophets, 5 of whose names are familiar to us, and one name isn't quite so familiar to most people. The prophets that his spirit previously was embodied by, oh, my tenses here are going to go off, the following prophets: Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad. Emmanuel, they claim in this material, was the real name of the real man whose name was later falsely changed to Jesus Christ, a person who did not ever exist and for whom there is zero historical evidence, which is rather remarkable considering that there were approximately 60 historians living in the overall area at the time of his existence and life there. Emmanuel, that name, however, happens to be mentioned in the Old Testament, in Isaiah 7:14, in Matthew 1:23, and his name shall be called Emmanuel. Okay, we're a little far field here, but stick with me. Muhammad also was a true prophet, but in each of these cases, Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, Muhammad, they brought forward a spiritual teaching that was not intended to be a belief system or a religion, but in all of those cases, the majority of human beings on earth didn't read, didn't write, had to rely on the tellings of other people who could control the information and who unfailingly corrupted it and turned it into our major religions. And we have other religions that arose as well. In this electronic age, it was determined that the spirit would reincarnate one final time and would once again bring the original teaching, the ancient spiritual teaching of this universe forward for human beings, and it would be preserved in this age due to the ability to disseminate it electronically, due to the fact that the majority of the world really could read and or write at this time, and that despite attempts perhaps to try and corrupt it again, it would survive intact. And this time, my joke about the whole thing is, because it's pretty amazing, that instead of finding a guy who was going to overturn tables in temples, or a firebrand brandishing a sword on horseback, they said, okay, we don't want any more charismatic leaders, so there's no more cults and no more deities and idols and gods and saints. How's about when the world finally discovers this guy? He's a middle-aged, pot-bellied, gray-bearded, one-armed Swiss farmer. And everybody went, yeah, that'll be the guy, let's give it to him. So it isn't about being special, because Meier, as I slipped in before, has survived 22 documented attempts on his life. He had to save his children from kidnapping at knife point. I've interviewed witnesses to at least 14 of the attempts. I've seen one of the bullet holes through the windows over there in Switzerland. It's not a joke to do this kind of a thing. And all of the people that want to step up and tell us that they are, contactees and prophets and abductees, nobody's after them except in their own minds. Meier has had to live an extraordinarily dangerous life in order to bring this material forward. And the unrelenting efforts that continue to this day to try to, discredit him and attack anybody associated with the case, that stuff is in and of itself an indication there just might be something here that distinguishes the Meier case and the man from all the wannabes, charlatans, frauds, phonies, and deluded people who have latched on to something. And let's reiterate only one thing. If anybody on Earth is actually in contact with beings we don't know exist, extraterrestrial human beings, that is hands down the most important story in human history. So when people in exopolitics, Mr. Bassett or Mr. this or Miss that, start talking about millions of contactees and hybrid babies, they are cavalierly, without one shred of evidence, wanting us to believe that the most important event, true story in all of human history is happening all over the place, and for some reason or other, they know about it and science doesn't. We have scientists that know, and a lot of them, frankly, are afraid to come forward. But they know.
Well, listen, Michael, we've just scratched the surface. I know there's so much more to this case, but unfortunately we're getting down on time, and I want to mention and discuss just a little bit about your new film, And Did They Listen?
Thank you.
This just came out recently, correct?
Yes. Yeah, last few months.
What can you tell us about the film? I'm sure we don't want to give away the whole thing. What would you like the viewers to know about this new film?
Okay, well, we won't give away the whole thing, but before I finish, I will give something away to your viewers.
Okay.
A freebie. But let me answer you. This film, I had been interviewed and filmed in this interview, among other things that happened in the film, by somebody who has been interested in the overall topic, knew a little about the Meier case, did further research. Nothing is rehearsed in here. And we get a chance to put forward some of the painfully clear facts and realities of what this case is about and how Meier and the Plejaren have tried to get us to wake up before we completely self-destruct. Meier was warned about the consequences of Fukushima within 1 week of that event. He was told about the meltdowns, the ultra super worst possible case scenario, the poisoning of the seas, the food chain, the air, the consequences to come that are only just now being spoken about mainly in the alternative media. We spoke about BP disaster. We even illustrate this. We have it in comic book form online for people who just want to visually get what this is about. Meier warned about the dangers of atomic energy plants back in the 50s. They have warned and warned. The Russian troop movements that are going on right now as we speak, not only in Eastern Europe, Ukraine, but the movements by the Russians and now others like the Chinese, the Canadians, towards the Arctic to claim mineral rights. Meier was talking about this as far back at least as 1987, and in 1975-76 forewarned about the Russian-Chinese military alliance, which is right now developing ever more strongly. We include an interview with Dr. Sanford Weinstein, a formerly skeptical physician and physicist who now calls Meier's prophetic information astonishing and amazing. We put lots into this film for anybody who's willing to think, to get off of their distractions long enough to put their iPhones down and click off the Xbox and realize that they live in this world. We have made it, and we're inheriting it, and we're passing this mess on to generations that in some ways won't be equipped to handle it. Meier has warned about these robotic, computerized weapons and what they ultimately bring. He has warned about these things for decades. We can, on the other hand, by paying attention to stuff that we also put in the film, wake up and take control again. There's a relatively small number of people who control all this stuff. But those who willingly give up their thinking and their rights and their energy and go along docilely here, it's not getting any prettier.
No.
So this film is loaded, as I think you know from watching it, without giving that away. But I will give this away just so I don't miss it in time. If your listeners want to buy that DVD, I will send along with that order another free full-length Meier film DVD, 2 for 1. It's on my website, and I'm glad to do it. And I will also, without trying to undo any benefit to myself, tell you my website and my blog and those linked from it will give you enough material for months of study. So anybody that doesn't want to get a DVD or can't afford it, fine. But if you want that DVD and it's pretty rich, I give you another one with it. You sit and you watch those, and then you may wonder what you've been doing with your life and your time for the past who knows how long.
Well, where can they get to your website? What's the URL?
It's simply called theyfly.com. THEY, F as in freedom, LY.com. Theyfly.com. And there's a They Fly blog where I update Meier's prophecies all the time. We've got so much stuff that UN reports that just came out, NASA reports that just came out, scientific reports, all corroborating Meier's material, and they don't even know they're corroborating it. It's ironclad. It's there. Information about the planet Mercury. I had a judge at a MUFON event first give me a hard time and then give me the nod that the Meier case was authentic based on a legal standard. 5 minutes with him, it's all it took. So, and this is included. I tell the story in the film. I also tell the story in the film of the Pleiaren monitoring craft that I was within 20 feet of when I was living up there in the mountains of Brazil. This nifty little craft that came by and visited me one night. Scared me at first, but there it was. And how the Pleiaren also gave me information to protect Meier and me and our work from somebody who had set a trap for us that neither Meier nor I knew about. And they it was in a transcript. It was sent to me. It turned out to be 100% true. These are my experiences, but they're not as important as the rest of Meier's prophetic information. And we put so much stuff in these films, and we want people to know, and then you decide for yourself if it's not for you or if it is for you. And if it's for you, there's plenty you can do.
Well, listen, Michael, as I said, we just scratched the surface tonight, folks. So if you want more information, you're interested in looking into this more, as Michael said, you can go to the website at theyfly.com. And you can also get to the blog right from the website as well, Michael?
Yes, it's linked right from there. And there's downloadable versions of these things. I mean, we've tried to do everything possible to make tons of free information, inexpensive products, and give away stuff to encourage people to learn. And this is really, truly full lifetime of study to find out what you never knew about so many things. It's opened my eyes. I've spent half my life researching this, and I couldn't be more grateful for it.
Well, the new film is entitled And Did They Listen? By Michael Horn. Michael, thanks again very much for coming on tonight and sharing your background and your knowledge on this this topic. I learned a lot of things I never knew about the Billy Meier case, I'll tell you that. And I'm sure the viewers have as well. So very much appreciated.
My pleasure. I want to thank you. And they have to mention, to get the freebie, let them mention your name or your show. And I will also say, in all fairness to the people that I have skewered a bit, anybody that wants to come on and debate me publicly about these claims, I am always ready. So, Rick, thank you for having me.
That sounds like a challenge.
Anytime.
Okay. All right. Well, Michael, you have a great evening. It's been nice visiting with you tonight, and we will stay in touch.
Sure will. Thank you so much.
Okay. Good night.
Night.
Good night, everyone.
Open the door, you'll find the secret. To find the answer is